and we're going to talk about the law of the limited lawn and ornamental license in this video. So a couple of things I want to cover actually deal with the label, but they're concerning the law, and that is, first and foremost, the label is the law. You're only allowed to use pesticides on the sites that the labels direct you to use on. So if it's an agricultural label, you may not use it in the landscape. Vice versa. If it's an aquatic label, you may not use it in the landscape. So only the sites which the label allows you to use them on. And then you must follow the mixing and loading directions that are on the label. It is illegal to use a higher dosage than what the label says. You can't mix at a higher rate. You can mix at a lesser rate, but not a higher rate. It's illegal to make more frequent applications than what the label says. So if it says, every 2 weeks, you may not do it every week. It's illegal to use a product that's not listed on the label. So we've already covered that. Some exceptions, you can use that lower dosage, right? So you can't go higher, but you can go lower. And you can use any application technique that's not prohibited. So you can use any technique unless the label says do not apply this way. Okay, if the label specifies a special way, then you can't do it that way. And you can mix the product with other products and with fertilizer unless the label tells you that you cannot. So most products can be mixed together unless the label directs you not to. There's two types of pesticides out there. There's general use and restricted use. So the general use is like your caution label, and that's the one you'll probably mostly be applying. But you are allowed under this license to apply restricted use chemicals as well. Just do so with caution, please. So you'll see in another section of this course, this fact sheet that you can actually print out, and it goes into much more detail about the label, and there's a label video exercise that you can follow along with. The one thing or a couple things that you want to note on the label is that it's important to see the environmental hazards, and typically if you're worried about the water, you're going to find that information in environmental hazards. So it'll say, do not apply to surface water, standing water, at the tidal high water mark. Anything to do with water, that's what you're going to find that in those environmental hazards. So make a note of that. The label is going to have on it a couple of things. And again, I'm going to skip through this a little bit because it's in another part of the course. But let's get into the law now. So who governs your license? It's not us here at University of Florida. That's not who governs the license. We're just educators, not regulators. The regulator is the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, lovingly called FDACS. They're the ones who issue your license, keep up with your CEUs, and come out and inspect. So they're the governing body. So when we're talking about pesticides, what are we referring to? Well, that's insecticides, miticides, fungicides, herbicides, all the sides, right? And anytime you apply a pesticide with payment, if you're getting paid to do so, you really need a license to do that. What about signage when you apply? So if you are applying a product, you do have to put a sign up. You're on public property, most of you that have this license. And so people could be walking their dogs, kids could be playing, those kinds of things. So you do need to put up a sign when you've applied pesticide. There's a couple of ambiguous statements that go along with this. And I'm sorry, this is how the law is written. One is the sign has to be posted in a conspicuous location. That's important to remember, a conspicuous location. What does that mean? An obvious location, someplace that you can see it. It has to be done at the time of application, but how long does it have to stay? That the inspectors tell me until dry. So until it's dry. If you're applying in one section and then going to apply in another, you might be able to come back and pull signs from the first section if it's dry. But that's what they're telling me is that's what they monitor for. So whenever you do apply, you do have to place a sign in a conspicuous location at the time of application. The sign has some rules on it. The sign must be at least 4 inches by 5 inches. It has to be weatherproof and rigid. It can't just be a paper printed off sign that you made. It has to have contrasting lettering so you can actually read it, and it's supposed to include the name of the license holder on it. Now, sometimes company names are put on here, and sometimes it's used for advertising. So if like your government, you could put the government name. So for us, it'd be Manatee County government. All right, so there is something called prior notification, and this is for neighbors. This is for people who actually have a sensitivity to pesticides. And if you have a sensitivity, I'm not saying, oh, you know, I saw on TikTok that this could cause something. And this is when you go to a doctor and they say that you have a sensitivity and you fill out paperwork, the doctor fills out paperwork, you pay $50 and the state puts you on this prior notification registry. It updates quarterly and it is up to you, the applicator, to keep up with this information. They will email it to you quarterly, but it's also found online. If you look up Florida Pesticide Registry of Prior Notification, you can actually find a map that you can zoom in on to the address that you are applying and see if anybody around that address needs prior notification. So again, what this is, it's people that have a sensitivity, they get on a registry, and when you go to apply, you have to check this registry to see if anybody in the surrounding area is on it. And then you have to notify them that you're going to apply. So you have to notify them, and it can be done several ways. When the law was written, email wasn't a big thing, so it's not listed on here, but you can email them as well. But mail, you can do it by mail. I wouldn't suggest that because it takes too long. Telephone, in person, or hand delivery. And there's a few things that you need to tell them, but you need to notify them prior to application. You need to tell them the type of pesticide that you're applying. It doesn't have to be the trade name. It has to be like herbicide or insecticide. Where it is going to be applied is important. And you have to give them 24-hour notification. So you have to notify them 24 hours in advance. I think email is a good way because then you have a record of it that you did it 24 hours in advance. And when you're telling them the type of pesticide, it's really good just to give them the active ingredient. That's what they're most concerned with. And sometimes, you know, they might just say, oh, well, okay, great. They can't stop you from applying. It's up to them to do something with the information that you give them. So, you know, you just have to notify them, but that's it. They can't say, oh, no, don't do that. You just have to give them notification so that they can leave the area if it bothers them. Record keeping. You do need to keep records, especially on those restricted use products. You must maintain your records for 2 years. And FDACS could come along at any time and ask for those records to review them. The things that you'd want to keep track of is, you know, where you're treating, with what, the materials, you know, what pests you're trying to control. So record keeping I recommend anyway, because, you know, I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday, let alone what I sprayed 3 months ago. So keep records. It'll help you get ahead of things. You could make notes. Hey, we had this weed infestation in this area. Then next year you could get ahead of that weed infestation by applying a pre-emergent instead of you know, waiting until all those weeds emerge and then having to deal with them. So keeping records is a really good idea to help you, you know, just in your overall pest control. So upon request, you have to give folks the name of the certificate holder, the license holder, whoever's spraying, that their name, the common name of the pesticide. And what is the common name? it's, that kind of active ingredient name would be like glyphosate for a Roundup product. And then the safety information from the label. So if somebody asks, these are the things that you are required to give them if they want to know. Now, do you have to tell them that you spray Manor every 2 months to control this, and that? No, those kinds of things become your business trade secrets. Let's say how you spray, when you apply, what you're using to treat what. Those are kind of, that's how you do your business, and you keep those things to yourself because you don't want everybody replicating something that's very successful for you, right? But some people may have a sensitivity or need information because there's been some damage or something of that nature. So then you have to give them this information. So when we're talking about the licenses, there's actually 3 different licenses that fall in this area. And one is the structural pest control. So as a government applicator, if you're applying around the buildings, doing like barrier treatments for buildings, that would be this limited structural pest control. Then we have the limited commercial, which is the limited commercial landscape maintenance license. That only allows people to apply in the beds and the shrubs, no turf, and they can only use caution labels. This is your license, the limited lawn and ornamental license, where you can apply in the turf. You can apply, here, let me mark it up for you. I'm going to use purple. Boom, this is your license right here, limited lawn and ornamental, that when you pass the test that you'll be able to have in your possession. And you can apply to the turf, you can use power equipment, and you don't have label restrictions. You can use those restricted use products. Well, there we go. So again, this license allows you to apply pesticides to the ground surrounding a public building by the building's owner or full-time employee. So what this means is, if you work for a trailer park and they pay you, not contracted, you have to be paid by the trailer park. It's the trailer park's land, their name, they own it. They buy the equipment that you apply with. They buy the spray that you apply with. All the liability is contained to that trailer park. That's this license, okay? You can't apply fumigants, but you can apply pretty much anything else as long as that liability is all contained to one entity. Same with government, right? It's government pays you, it's government property, they own the equipment, they buy the chemical, all the liability is to the one entity. That's this license. It does not allow you to operate a pest control company. Okay, this license doesn't allow you to go out and be one of those companies with the big trucks with the sprayers on the back that you can contract and go what we call route to route, home to home to home. You can only spray on the property of the one entity who's paying you. So with this license, it renews every 4 years. So every 4 years, you're going to have to pay a renewal fee, but you will also need to get some continuing education units. You will need 4. For every 4 years, you need 4 what we call CEUs or continuing education units. You'll need 2 in core and 2 in category. So you'll have to look for the category limited lawn and ornamental CEUs. Okay, so your license name, that's the category you look for along with any core. So 4 every 4 years. The renewal fee currently, I don't know that it's going to ever change, but currently is $75 to renew with CEUs, or you can retest to renew your license. So you can just retake the test to get your license, and that would be $150 each time you retest. About record keeping, again, the records must be kept for 2 years, especially on those restricted use products. You have to have 2 years of records on those. They should include the name of the applicator, the type and amount of pesticide, and what you were treating for, the date, and where you treated. There is in this course a record, a sample record log of pesticides applications, and it's from FDAX. So that is exactly what they're looking for on that log. If you don't use that log, that's fine. You can use your own log, but you just want to make sure that all of those categories that they have on their log are on your log, because that's what they're looking for. If you get in trouble, it does take a lot to get in trouble, I will say, but if you get in trouble and you do something that you shouldn't, probably a couple of times, they can revoke your license. And if your license is revoked, it takes 3 years before you can try to get your license back. Okay, and if you're getting your license, it's probably because you need to have it for your job. And so if you get your license revoked, a lot of times that means that you can't do your job. So you want to make sure that you don't ever get in that place. There is another license out there that we just like to tell people about because sometimes they get confused, and that is the Pest Controller Operator License, or PCO license. I call that the Mac Daddy license. Okay, that is like the biggest pesticide license you can get. It takes 3 years of working under somebody with that license to be able to get that license. Or if you have a degree in like entomology or something similar, you can also, you can use that towards those 3 years, but you still have to work under somebody for a year. So even me, that I have degrees and I teach this kind of information all the time, I still have to work under somebody for a year for me to be able to get that license. It costs $300 to take that exam. The exam can last up to 4 hours. You get 4 hours to take it. And you have a license then for a pest control business, and then your own personal license would fall under that. So you actually kind of get 2 licenses, one to operate the business and then one that's yours. And then you have to keep up with your CEUs every year on that license. This is the license that the termite folks have, that the fumigation folks have. When somebody comes inside and sprays in the home, that's the kind of license that they're working under. And same with spraying turf, going route to route. So the people that spray turf going home to home to home, they're working under this license. And when I say working under this license, I mean someone in the company has this license and they can have unlimited ID card holders working under them, but they are responsible for those folks. And if those folks do something wrong, it's the PCO license holder that gets in trouble. Okay, so with that, that's the law that you need to know for this exam. And we'll see you again in a review. Thank you.